The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. From hot dogs to cool kitties, this is Darkside of the Pooch.
Welcome back to another rousing rendition of Come on, give me a bark. Give me a little yelp. Give me something.
It's kind of the mood I'm in today.
I know, right? Doctor, you can't be like that, man. Dr. Rab Stewart, Rossbridge Animal Hospital. Of course, Darkside of the Pooch brought to you by the fine folks at Ed's Pet World down there, and 50 years of business down there in beautiful Homewood. Go down there and tell them Tone a Bone or Dr. Rab sent you down there, and they've got all kinds of exotic pets. I got my chinchilla down there. I've gotten all kinds of, I get my rats. I got my snake down there, my Balboa, which just had a huge monster. He had a rat like this big the other day. It was amazing. The thing was almost 3 times the size of his head. And he took the entire thing and stripped us. It was like, man, I wish we could do that. Don't you wish, like, after Thanksgiving, you could have like a big ass meal and then you could just shed your skin and be okay with it? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great if Mom walked in and she looked in your recliner and she just saw this old skin of yours hanging off the side? She's like, oh, he must have molted or something. I guess he's okay. You're outside with your brand new skin.
I want it to be like I want it to hold its form though. Yeah, I don't want it to,
like one of those cicadas, like the cicada skins.
I want it to hold its form.
Yeah, be kind of weird. Be great for Halloween. You can put that on the front porch and no one know the difference. So check out Ed's Pet World. They're open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and open on weekends. And they do a wonderful job with exotic. And of course, their other place, Sasquatch Toys and Comics, is just killing it. They do comics from 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Do you have any toys, old toys? You have kids. If you're like me, you had some old toys that somehow just kind of came with you. I had an excavator, a Tonka Troy excavator that was literally, it looked like it was brand new. I played with it. It looked like it was brand new. It was about this big. It was a big thing. And I've had it my entire life. I think I got it when I was 4 years old, and somehow it traveled with me, and I gave it to my first son. I don't know where it's at now. But do you have any old toys or anything boxed up? Or are you a 40-year-old virgin? Do you have anything, you have any Star Trek toys boxed up or anything?
So nothing like that. But I had, when I was a kid, I stayed with my grandparents a good bit because my dad had cancer when I was really young. And so I would go to their house, and they had kept a few of his Matchbox cars or whatever. So he had it was a model. It was a kind of it was like, think of the size of the very first cell phones that were made. Yeah. The very first. So it was about like, it wasn't a tiny Matchbox or a Hot Wheel. It was bigger than that. Mm-hmm. It was like a 1970 red GTO.
It was probably really heavy too, right? Cast iron.
It wasn't super heavy. It was all plastic.
Really?
But it was pretty detailed. And I loved that thing. It was my favorite car to play with when I was a kid. Well, I kept it. And I found it when, or maybe my mom found it. I can't remember. But anyway, when I had my son, she brought it over and she was like, look at this. Look what I found.
Oh, wow.
And, to me, it was just the greatest thing in the world. And I said, Robert, you're going to love this, man. Look what I got. And he couldn't care less.
Oh, man.
So we still have it at the house. And there's a few like of my toys. And it's like all like old Star Wars like toys that I played with, nothing boxed up or anything. So I've still got some of those laying around the house that he played with when he was 6 or 8 years old, but he's kind of outgrown that stuff.
You got any Pinewood Derbies?
No, I never.
Man, I found an old box of Pinewood Derbies. I found a box, and when my dad passed 4 or 5 years ago, my sister, we were just going to auction everything off, and of course she went through every single box, nuts and screws, and the whole nine, and she found a bunch of my stuff, and she found a couple marionette puppets that I had, and then she found a box of my old Pinewood Derby cars, and I was like, that's pretty cool. But they don't make toys like they do now. They're just so easy and plastic, and they're so disposable. And I mean,
kids don't even like them anymore. I don't even think my kids don't even play with toys anymore.
Yeah, it's
all iPads and phones, and we try to limit that stuff. But I used to love going to toy stores and getting an action figure when I was little, whatever it was, G.I. Joe or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, I guess when you get to be 11 and 12, that kind of starts to get phased out a little bit, but my kids were never into that. It was such a short period of time. So I think they just have so much more they're playing with that the stuff that we played with, that's gone. And I think that the generation before that, like the stuff that they played with, we never played with. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, or they're into things that we would never think, like these little widgets, these little hand things, the little what do they call them, the little buttons they push,
fidget spinners
and all that stuff. And it's kind of like, we had tops, And I know it's funny because I was sitting there watching a TV commercial, and it was for some AIDS virus pharmaceutical or something. And there were these two grown men, and they had gloves on, and they were hitting this ball up against the wall. And my son said, "Is that handball?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Why don't you ever see anybody play handball?" I said, "Dude, that was my default game. I had a friend of mine, Steve Billy, lived across the street. And we were best friends. We'd have sleepovers all the time. We'd throw baseball, whatever. We'd always do something. And we'd ask each other the same question: "What do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do?" And we after about 35 minutes, we eventually just start doing something. But we always played handball. We just I had an old racquetball. We had a wall in our backyard, back by the house, and we'd play handball for hours. I mean, we just make up a game of handball. Have our own rules and stuff. So yeah, but it's just a different world we live in. And I like to think our kids are smarter and better than we were, but sometimes I wonder.
Man, it's the same. There's nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun, and their kids will be different than them, and they'll be having the same conversation that you and I are having in 30 years.
Info at TonyCurryRadio.net, info at TonyCurryRadio.net. We have several interesting email to get into, and also a couple of interesting stories. Before we do that, though, you and I had pretty in-depth. I actually got a couple of emails on it about people talking about baseball cards. They loved us talking about our baseball cards and how we used to get the 3-packs and the cellophane to be able to look at the fronts and the back stuff. We got the Dodgers and the Yankees playing each other for the first time in 15 years. I could not believe the Yankees haven't won a World Series in 15 years. I could not, when I thought, I was like, what, 2009? Of course, my Reds haven't won squat since 1990, but I know you're a big baseball guy, and you got your cards laid out. You got all your Dodgers. You're gonna lay them out like a baseball field. You ready for the big World Series start next week?
I'm ready. So the Dodgers and the Yankees have not played in the World Series since 81.
So it's been 81. Someone told me it was 15 years ago. So,
1981.
Wow. That's insane.
So I think everyone thought when they were the Brooklyn Dodgers, they played a good bit. And then I think they had a series in the 70s. And then I think they had and I know 81 was the last time.
Were you rooting for a Subway Series? And I know that's happened one other time. No. It's just so cool. And I didn't either, but
I wanted Ohtani. I want Ohtani and Judge, in MLB, the Major League Baseball has been salivating over this possibility. They want the stars, and I want the stars.
Two biggest markets, and the New York Liberty, the WNBA, they win a championship last night, whereas we recorded the show on the 21st. So it's good to be a New York sports fan right now. The Giants suck, thank goodness, but my Bengals beat them last week. But I'm
excited. I've got a friend that's a big Dodgers fan, and a couple friends are big Dodgers fans, and so they're excited. My Braves have been done for several weeks, so that's unfortunate, But I'm looking forward to it. You can't beat this matchup this year. It's the best.
And I know that some people are going to boo-hoo me on here this, but I love when players that have great careers, like the Charles Barkleys of the world, I love when they get a chance to get a ring. Bryce Harper needs to get a ring. I mean, he works his ass off. Ohtani needs to get a ring. Judge, when you see great baseball players, and listen, if you're playing for the Yankees, you're pretty much, you're as far as you can go. It's not like you're going to get on any market. It's going to be bigger than that. But you want to see great players get great accolades because they deserve it. And when they play for shoddy teams, I was thinking the other day, it was so funny because Matthew Stafford's sitting there with the Detroit Lions forever. He doesn't do squat. He goes to the Rams, win a Super Bowl, thank goodness. But Detroit right now is better than they ever have been. And he's like, why couldn't you play that like that when I was a quarterback there? You know what I mean? They're playing fantastic. Yeah. They look great yesterday against Minnesota.
Now they got golf. I
know, right? And I mean, can you make an argument that Stafford's better in golf during his heyday? I mean, it's like, but it's crazy. Before we get into what's going on at Rossbridge Animal Hospital, of course, 208-0301 is your phone number. You can check you out, rossbridgevet.com, of course, your website. I saw this interesting story that came down actually this morning. Psychologists who study the impact of pets' deaths on their owners have come out, and we kind of knew this, but they've done some really in-depth research that suggests that losing pets can be just as hard as losing an actual loved one, a family member. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that because, I'm doing a show called Home Field Advantage, about mortgage businesses. Her name is Teresa, and she's really, really good. And I was talking to her last week. We talked about divorces. How do you deal with divorces when you're trying to sell someone's home? When the judge says you need to sell the home, and you've got all of that of those memories and all those wonderful things, depending on how long they've been in the house, and then you got this ugly divorce going on, and she's right in the middle of it. And I said, you kind of have to be a therapist, don't you? She's like, oh my gosh, you would not believe. I hear it from him, and then I hear it from her, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm just here to sell your house. That's my job. But she says I have to hear it both ways. I imagine you probably get it a little bit on both sides. I mean, you've shared a couple times where you can tell where the husband and the wife don't really see the same way when they're in your office. They're kind of bickering a little bit. When you lose a pet, I can imagine you probably see it that way too, right?
Well, once it's over, it's really easy. Like, once we've, made that decision and we've put them down, that's the easy part. But the hard part is getting to that point. That's where we have a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and we kind of go back and forth, and we're trying to counsel them on what to do. And you get, the two sides, kind of one person will have one opinion and the other person will have another. But, after it's done, a lot of that tension is relieved. Yeah.
I can see that. Have you ever had a situation where one wants to save, the other one doesn't?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty common, but when they come into our office, they're at least to a point where they can consider it and talk about it. I think that if whoever owns the pet jointly or whatever, if they're both in the office, then they are at least open to the thought of having that end of life conversation.
Yeah.
If they weren't, then they wouldn't want to hear it. They would just have, if one person thought it was time, then that one person usually brings the dog in and they're, well, let me go and I'll talk to, whoever else is the decision maker in the group. And then we'll either come back or we won't.
Yeah.
We don't get a lot of, two people are in the room, one person's ready and one person's not, and they're going to fight it out. If they're there, they have some idea that it's time.
Do you usually, what do you usually say? Y'all talk amongst yourself. I'll come back in a few minutes. I'm going to go run some tests kind of thing. And then you come back 30 minutes later. Is that what you do?
No, so I'm really big on, like, at least in the office, like non-confrontational things.
Yeah.
I don't really, I'm a man. I compartmentalize things. I don't really have lots of emotions unless it's anger or frustration,
Oh.
So, if they need to talk, I'll generally say, okay, we're going to give you some time because at this point, we've already talked about what the possible diagnoses are, what the possible treatments are, what the possible outcomes are after the treatment, and how much all of it's going to cost. We've talked about that. And so now it's their turn to process that and think about what questions they have or whatever. So I'll just say, hey, we're going to step out. We're going to shut the door. When y'all have had time to talk about it, just open the door and we'll come back in.
Yeah. Something else that I want to get into real briefly here before we get into our emails, info@TonyCurryRadio.net. He is the Dr. Rab Stewart. He's the owner of the Rossburg Animal Hospital. They're the best. I've been through everything with my pets and very blessed to have him in my life and our family's life. We've been talking about the loss of animals recently because of the hurricanes. And you and I talked about this last week. Do for your pet whatever you do for yourself. Obviously, if you're taking off, you're leaving town, then your pet should be with you. Don't think they're going to be fine while you go up the street for a little bit and come back and hope like hell they're still there. Your pet is part of your family. And I think for the most part, people feel that way, but we do know that in the middle of a storm, you may not be able to find your cat. You may not be able to find your dog. Maybe it's already gone, whatever. And you hope like heck that it can be spared through the storm. Maybe you can have some type of a miraculous story where you're actually linked back up with that animal. But there was a very interesting story that I saw that was really interesting. I'm all about non-for-profits. I've had one myself. I know that you're heavily involved in that, but it's called Dogs Matter. And his name is Stephen King. It's not the Stephen King, the writer Stephen King. But Stephen King's 51. He's been clean and sober for 13 years, but he lost everything to meth. when he was 37, 38 years old. He lost his job, lost his wife, lost his kids, lost his house, lost everything, right? And so he's turned his life around. And now, since he's gotten clean 13 years ago, he started this non-for-profit called Dogs Matter. And it's a non-for-profit that takes animals of people who need to go into treatment. And he holds on to them and basically fosters those animals until you get your, together, and then you get your pet back. And he said he's got a 100% success rate. No one's ever dropped their dog off, left, and didn't come back to get it. He has gone up 13,000 dogs in 13 years. He said, when I first did it, I had 8 animals in my house. And I thought, okay, I think I've got something here, but I need to figure something out. So he started this non-for-profit. He actually built this building. He has never had to euthanize one animal. And it's in the Dallas area, if you have to go into rehab, and I saw something the other day where deaths from drug overdoses have taken a 13% drop, which is great. We're doing something right. I hope it's not some anomaly, but I just thought that was really cool for a non-for-profit, because we don't ever think about that. Okay, I got to go to rehab. Who's going to take care of my dog? Because, usually you go to rehab, it's a 90-day stint. You're gone. You can't have your cell phone. You can't have everything. And you're trying to make your life better. And while you do that, the last thing you need to worry about is your pooch. So I thought that was kind of cool. I just want to share that.
Yeah, we haven't had a lot of people have to do that, but I know that we've had some. Yeah. And normally it's a family member that steps up and takes care of them. But I guess that, those people are fortunate to have family members to take care of their pets, because some of these people don't. Either they don't have them, they don't know where they are, or they've been excommunicated. They've been
excommunicated in most cases. And I get that. I haven't been there and done that myself. It's just like family matters. They're just, they're over it. They're tired of the SARS. Yeah,
but sometimes they have to, sometimes they have to cut them off,
sure.
Because unfortunately, I've had friends and acquaintances. Fortunately, not many, but I've had friends that have gotten into some stuff they shouldn't have gotten into, and that didn't let go of them. And their rock bottom is when they started stealing from their parents.
Yep.
And then their parents changed the locks, and they're done with them. They have to be.
I don't know.
For the good of the person.
For the good of the person. I don't know too many people who don't know someone that either has cancer or has had some type of drug dependency issue. And I've told the story. I worked with this guy named Blazeman who used to do 7 to Midnight on classic rock.
I remember. I absolutely remember Blazeman.
Yeah. And his son was stealing from him. Taking computers out of the house. Blazeman was into his toys. He liked his toys and stuff, but he'd come home and half his stuff would be gone. And his son was arrested for like the 4th time. And he had the chance to bail him out, and he left him in there. And he's like, it was right before Thanksgiving. He's like, "You're going to bail me out before the holidays, aren't you?" He's like, "Not this time," and left him in there for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And it was probably the best thing he could have done for his son.
Yeah.
It's just, sometimes you have to do, the worst thing you can do is enable someone like that. They need to find their own footing. That's the only way they're going to come out of it. So great stuff. Okay. info@TonyCurryRadio.net. This is Adam in Birmingham. He wants to know, how has Dr. Rab infiltrated the AI world? Everyone's utilizing artificial intelligence. As we're doing this show here on Zoom, there's now an AI button on our Zoom, which is super cool. I can tap it, and then after the show, I can go back and read synopsis of our show. It's the most amazing thing. I usually have to tag everything, for our podcast. So when you look at the podcast, you know what you're going to be listening to. And I'll say, on today's episode, blah, 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 blah. It actually does it for me. It gives me like a 45 sentence synopsis, depending on how long you're talking, a podcast of what the show is about. In this particular episode, Tony asked Dr. Rab about blah, blah, blah. And it's amazing. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything, but it's just kind of, you forget things. But is there anything that you've utilized? Somebody said the other day that we're all going to be into AI before you can sit there and fight it all you want. You're probably using it and you don't even know it. But are you utilizing it at any point now?
I'm not using it right now. We're starting to see some things like some services that do AI reading of x-rays. Mm-hmm. So instead of a person, like we read almost all of our x-rays here. We've been looking at x-rays between myself and Dr. Johnson. We've been looking at x-rays for close to 50 years, Yeah. So we read our own x-rays here, but sometimes you can send them off to a radiologist and they, a board certified radiologist, and they'll get back with you and say, well, I think, you're seeing this and consider that. But so now some of those radiologists are being replaced by AI. We haven't utilized the services yet. It's just that's an avenue that I just feel like I'd rather a human look at it, and have human error rather than computer error. But maybe the computer error would be a lot less than human error. So that's something somebody else is going to have to dip their toe in and let me know how it goes.
Man, but the old man in me comes out. I'm 50. I'm feeling like I don't want to deal with it, but there is some really cool things. Again, I don't want to pay for that type of service, but there are some really cool things you can do. And I mean, you could even do your voice. I mean, there's all kinds of different things you can utilize. And I know a lot of places that do copywriting, they write scripts or whatever for things like that. It's pretty amazing. And of course,
my friend sends me like hilarious pictures that he's generated with Chat GPT.
Yeah.
I can't do it because I have an iPhone, but I can't remember the app that he has because he has an Android, and he sends me just the most hilarious. He'll tell Chat GPT to just, show me a picture of a shark eating spaghetti on the moon or something ridiculous like that. And, here comes the picture.
It's a little like when Surrey first came out, people were just trying to ask it questions just to try to screw it up. And you can ask Chat GPT, and you can ask it to do anything, and it will come up with something. It may not be good, but it'll come up with something. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Johnny in Birmingham wants to know, he says he has 3 black cats that live in his neighborhood, and he sees them out in the streets at night. They're kind of like outdoor cats, but he's afraid for their safety because of what he's heard around Halloween. People evidently, I think there's a run on black cats at some shelters and stuff, and they do sacrificial things, some sickening things. I hope it's not true, but I know that some of it is. Have you heard of any of these things like that? And Johnny wants to know, should I take these cats? He doesn't know who they belong to. He says, if I get a hold of one, should I hold one till after the holidays?
Yeah, people do weird things with black cats around Halloween. And I just think it's people who just don't really know any better. I don't think it's like seriously organized or anything like that. It's probably just kids that, they hear about this and they just do it. But, I don't know that I would go as far as like thinking that you have to take them in because of that. I'd say if you like the cats, take them in, no matter if it's Halloween or not. I think the odds are they'd be fine. But, if you care about them, take them in anyway.
What's the percentage of black cats? Do you have a percentage of what color cats? I mean, rarely do you see white cats. I see black cats more, white cats. Do you know how many black cats we have?
I don't. And I'll tell you that in veterinary medicine, we predominantly see dogs at almost every small animal practice. You're going to get the majority of dogs. It may be, 75-25 dogs to cats. It may be 90-10. There's just not a lot of cat owners bring their cats in. And it's unfortunate because cats, they're really stoic, and we can pick up on things that the owners don't. But so we don't see a ton of cats in the profession. Like, we have all feline clinics, and of course they see a lot of cats. That's all they see. But I mean, if I had to give a number out, I'd probably say, first of all, like a straight black cat with no other markings is, it's not super common. So, total black cats, it might make up 1% of the cats that we see.
Wow. So if I see a black cat, there's a chance it's got some type, like on its toes, it's got some type of marking. You're talking about pure black.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of them, they're going to have some white somewhere.
Yeah. That's interesting. Eva in Hueytown said that she saw a sign for sale, Chiweenies for sale, a mix between Chihuahuas and Wiener dogs, Dachshunds. She said, what behooves somebody of finally taking 2 animals and putting them together? And what creates, like, say, no one even knew what a Labradoodle was until someone started coming out with Labradoodles, and then it became its own breed. What does it take to make its own breed? I've never heard of Chiweenie before. I'd imagine it's a pretty good looking dog.
Yeah. It's a pretty common mixed breed, Chihuahuas and Dachshunds. So we see a bunch of those. It's one of the more common ones. I think accidents are what, that's, it's a happy accident. You put 2 dogs together and you think, oh man, well, look what this turned into. This is good looking. Let's keep this going. I think that's how most of these mixed breed that end up being purebred.
Well, you brought this up in a previous show, because I'm thinking to myself, let's do some type of Russian. I know Russians were famous for taking all kinds of different animals and mixing them together to try to create things for war and stuff. They think that's where where the Yeti came from. But you're thinking to yourself, what would happen if you took a Chihuahua with a Great Dane? Well, first of all, think about that for a second. I mean, if you could figure out a way to make that happen, I guess it would be possible. If there's life, you
can make it happen.
Yeah, there's a life, there's a way. But when you have, and I imagine you've seen that, if you take a predominantly big dog with a predominantly small dog, which gene usually takes over? Will the dog be average? Will it be small, big?
Oh, it'll be average.
Just average.
Yeah. It'd be average, but you have to, the female has to be the bigger of the two, because if the female is the smaller of the two, and there's a big size difference, then they're going to have problems delivering the puppies. Puppies are going to be too big. Yeah. They're not going to fit through the birth canal. So, I mean, and then also you have the thing of insemination to get around, but that can easily be fixed by like artificial insemination.
How prevalent is artificial insemination in the pet world?
Oh, it's very prevalent.
Is it?
I mean, absolutely. If you have a breeding facility and a breeder that are really producing high quality dogs, and they want a very specific bloodline, or cats for that matter, purebred cats are, I mean,
crazy.
It's just just a big deal for cats as it is dogs. But yeah, I mean, there's different types of artificial insemination, where you can, inseminate into the, you can use a pipette and just kind of put it in there. I mean, you can implant it into the ovary. I mean, that's how crazy it can be. So yeah, it's big business.
All right. Helen wants to know, ask Dr. Rabb if he's ever seen a cat get stuck inside a pumpkin.
No, but that sounds pretty funny.
I could see where a cat would get inside a pumpkin, obviously not one that's lit. I don't know why someone would put the top back on it unless it could come out the front, but okay.
And then you could be pretty easy to get it out.
Well, yeah. I mean, you just take the top off. I mean,
or you smash it.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't want to do that with your little kitty.
The cat has 9 lives.
Well, that's true. Particularly around Halloween. Info at TonyCurryRadio.net. Info at TonyCurryRadio.net. So I'm out doing some mores the other night. The weather's been fantastic. It's great. My dog, which is sitting behind me right now, he's laying on the floor. Rainer dog was behind me scratching. I have gravel around my fire pit, and it's pretty deep gravel, and he's scratching through the gravel, and I'm like, "What are you doing, boy?" And he's just pulling. And much like an animal will do that on a blanket, or like cats, they try to make themselves a little warm spot, I guess, or a little comfortable spot. We still don't know why they do it, but they scratch a whole lot, and then they do the turn, and they lay down. Well, he was doing it on gravel. And to the point where now his paws are sore. He won't let me touch his paws because he was trying to get down, I guess, to the dirt, I guess. Okay, can you tell me why dogs do that, knowing that it's probably not going to be any more comfortable than it would be if he just lay on the cold gravel?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're just trying to organize it in a way. My dog does it all the time on his dog bed that he lays in all the time. Like he gets up, he doesn't. Nothing really changes with the dog bed, but he's going to sit there and punch it and scratch at it until he has it however he thinks he has it.
Yeah.
So, I think it's, even if it doesn't change a whole lot, I think that it's just kind of a routine that they do. It's almost like making their bed.
Yeah.
You can make your bed. It's not going to make it any more comfortable. It's kind of what you do. I think that's what they're doing.
Final question. And this comes from me as well. I start putting my dog up in the bathroom when I leave the house. I love the dog. It just when I leave it alone in the car, it will find a bottle of water and it will rip the top off. It just creates a mess where it does not want to be alone. And I get that. So I start putting him in the bathroom. He's got his bed in there. I take him out all the time. He's now urinating in his own bed, which I thought was really bizarre. And I could only tell because I smelled him. I gave him a cut and I was kind of like, did you pee in your own bed? Because I knew that animals don't pee where they sleep. He's got the entire bathroom to pee in if he wants to. but he's peeing in his own bed. Is he doing that just to get back at me?
He might be doing it while he's sleeping. You know, you would need to try to, if it's possible, you need to try to nail down if it's like, if he's actively peeing or if he's asleep. It's
always in the same spot.
Yeah, that would be two different things. You know, if he's actively peeing on it or if he is asleep when he does it.
Okay. Anything fun going on at your place? We got Halloween coming up, man. We got an election coming up. You got any dogs and cats voting for Kamala, voting for Trump? You got Trump dogs and have you seen anybody? Have you seen red dogs, blue dogs? Do you have any feeling?
Well, you know, as with any election year, this is the biggest election we've ever had. It's the biggest election we'll ever have. No election will ever be bigger than this one until the one that we have in 2028.
Uh-huh. You're probably right.
So I guess, you know, to describe my feelings on this election, I'm going to go with Bill Murray from Ghostbusters, where it's the end of times. It's dogs and cats living together.
There you go. Tell people how they can find you, my friend.
Oh, come around and see us. We're located at 2001 Greenside Way, 35226. You can just come on by and
stop. Even if you don't have a problem, stop. I need to come down and get some. I need to come down and get some flea meds tomorrow. But come down and just check out. It's a great facility. It's a killer facility.
You can call us. Yeah, we have phones. We have phones that work. They're plugged into the wall.
Yeah.
They are not AI generated phones.
You're on social media all hours of the night. I see you on X, tweeting people in and out.
We have real people answering the phones and not robots.
Isn't that great?
And we have a Facebook page that is sometimes monitored.
There you go. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
See ya.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.